Yeah, look, not politicize the issue because we go to save every child. We don't ask,
Mm,
what's the child's orientation or where they're from, or even if the child agrees with me and my faith. It doesn't
mm,
matter. But we also have to become intellectually honest in America again. We can't deny truth, absolute truth. And the truth is that the current administration is doing practically nothing, almost nothing. I mean, actually retroactively being disruptive to some of the policies and pillars that were built over the last 10 years. Uh, so this current administration has set a precedent, which then remember, when a federal administration sets a precedent, it trickles down into state government.
mm.
And
Right.
we're seeing now the rollback of some safeguards that we fought for a decade for to be put in place in states like California that have now been destroyed, such as California canceling the sex offender registry. So you don't
What?
know when you buy, yeah, it's canceled. Gavin Newsom canceled the sex offender registry of California. So when you take a stance at a White House level, so goes the leadership, so goes the nation. And so you're giving liberty to some of these radical factions, maybe in state government, local government, independent school districts, to be radicalized, and it actually is very destructive for the fight against child sexual exploitation.
Well, and that's one of the things people said that that when the previous administration or in previous administrations, when they were separating children from their families, not holding them in camps or things like that, part of the point of that policy was to make sure that those kids were not being trafficked. And so they wanted to make sure that whatever adult they came over here with was actually a family member, that they actually belonged to them. And now the Biden administration has apparently lost 85,000 undocumented children just into the country somewhere.
Yeah, I'm so glad you look again. We're just speaking to truth here. Here's the truth. President Obama deported more people than President Trump. President Trump is the president with the most focus on security and border, and the only president in U.S. history that acknowledged that children are being sold for sex. He acknowledged that from the Oval Office. He formed task forces. He appropriated funding, brought the NGOs in, and did incredible work.
Mm,
The cages that they said, President Trump put children in, those facilities were built by President Obama as part
Right.
of his deportation program. President Obama correctly took a child and a father, a supposed father, separated them for 45 minutes to an hour. You ask the same set of questions of both to corroborate the story, to see, is this child, in fact, this man's child? They reunite them. Trump reunited them, but you must, at the border, separate, interrogate, ask questions. None of that's happening. It's
mm.
illegal now by Biden initiative. It's illegal for CBP on the border to question a man, to ask him whether it is his
What?
daughter or not. There's no questioning going on. Zero. There's no
Oh my
questioning
gosh.
going on the border. There's no search and verify. There's no going. Most of the drugs, the fentanyl that's coming into the U.S. is coming in through the backpack of a human slave, of a sex traffic victim, because they're not allowed to search. They're not allowed to frisk. They'll call it apprehension. And I go to the border. I mean, goodness gracious, we were shot at the border. We do a lot of work there. They'll bring them in. They'll sit them down. They'll make a phone call. A white bus shows up, and they're transported to an NGO. Health and Human Services by law is supposed to examine every child that's crossing the border to see if they have a medical condition. Are they malnourished? None of that's happening. HHS is
Wow.
nowhere to be found on the border. You don't know
Right.
what disease is coming in. Has the child been raped in transit through the Darien Gap? Because most of them have been
Hmm.
sexually exploited. 60% of women and children are sexually
Wow.
exploited prior to arriving to the border. None of that is happening. So to compare the two administrations from a perspective of, are we protecting human dignity and human life, and are we preventing bad characters from sexually exploiting women and children? The previous administration, absolutely. The current administration, Absolutely not.
Well, and that's the thing that to me is so frustrating is, you hear these politicians saying, oh, they're coming from these devastated countries and we need to help everyone. And, oh, what does the Statue of Liberty say? And you go, okay, yeah, that's cool and all, but you also are now incentivizing the very criminals that are guaranteed to harm the people that you say you're trying to help.
Look, I'll say this to you. Can you imagine? And this is number one, it's lies. The White House has not acknowledged not one time since 2020 that children are being sold for sex, yet they have all the evidence. They know of all the children that have died, the bodies buried. They know of the rape trees. They understand. They know. They have all the intel. They look the other way because the political motive is different. The end justifies the means. If Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary of the United States government for President Biden, if Karine Jean-Pierre tomorrow morning stood up in the White House press room and said the following: President Joe Biden had an epiphany last night, and he came to the understanding that children are being sexually abused and raped and sold as commodities by the cartel. Do you know what would happen? The American public would demand for the border to be controlled and shut down. So they don't do it. They don't do it because it doesn't play into the cheap labor movement. It doesn't play into the trilateral agreement that Joe Biden signed with Spain and Mexico, where he said we will take 7 million migrants before the end of his term. It doesn't play into the Davos crowd and the World Economic Forum movement of moving people. When people move, children are sexually exploited. That's why the Super Bowl is the #1 sex trafficking day of the year.
Right, because they bring in the prostitutes and their children. Right.
So you're moving millions of people from 180 countries around the world into our country, and you're going to want the American people to believe that nobody is sexually exploited? Come on. They know if they were to acknowledge it, the general public would demand action.
I grew up in New Jersey, and we have an expression within the community that a fish rots from the head down.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. More reasons not to trust your government. The government failing, sucking at its job. Yeah, that's why that's what you guys.
The book exists.
That's why we wrote the book, Reasons to Trust the Government. And yes, it is a blank book because there are no reasons to trust the government. So
both the Jaco and Joe's videos show you how little we can depend on the people that we've vested the power into.
Mm-hmm. We've given them authority to protect us, and they're refusing to do it.
They're doing literally the opposite of protecting us. Can you believe
that when he said that they're like making it so you can't ask questions and they're not separating people? I mean, the Biden administration is literally colluding, and I know that's not the right word to use, but they're basically colluding with human traffickers. And I want to believe it's not on purpose, that these are not just nefarious actors who want people to be abused. But man,
I mean,
you're either stupid or evil. I don't know.
The deal is I try not to, I forget what is it? Not Hanlon's razor. Hanley is simple.
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor is simple. Hanlon's, I think, is the malice where stupidity would suffice.
Yep.
I don't think that they're stupid. I just think that their interests don't lie in the same place as the American people's. And so,
yeah,
no matter what they do, obviously the criminals are going to try to do something to capitalize off of it. I think that they know they're doing that and just don't care because their agenda matters that much to them.
Yeah, it was like that guy when we had the conversation at the party who said, I don't care that women are going to lose their opportunities because inclusion is his most important value.
Correct.
So people being hurt is just a unfortunate side effect
Correct. Collateral
of
damage.
initiating the policy. And so that, I mean, that tells you a lot that these people who say that they care about you, who say that they have your best interests at heart, who say they love you, they love the people, loving on the people, like Miss Tiffany Henyard, okay? They're not, because they are fine with hurting people in order to achieve their agenda.
But I want to be clear, everybody to some extent is fine with that. That's what
true.
Tucker Carlson was talking about with presidents. All presidents, take lives. What they're saying is that I'm going to protect my people, whoever I think
That's right.
my group is.
That's right. And I think that's also why we're seeing now with the new protests against Israel and stuff like that, that whole coalition falling apart, because they're not going to stick up for you and your thing. They're only going to stick up for themselves and their thing.
Yep.
And further to that point, love James Lindsay, friend of Generally Irritable, our channel. This guy's awesome. We love him. One of the biggest brains I know.